I have a question on a completely different subject. Listening to the Don Giovanni overture and everything, there are a lot of things, from being familiar with the orchestral version, there are a lot of things that were changed, dynamics and articulations and everything. When you perform this, do you incorporate those to any degree, or do you just take this arrangement as an entity unto itself and just go with it?
I think anytime you do an arrangement, you can go back to the original and change anything you want. Because one thing Mr. Painter always taught us was to assume that we're as good an arranger as the arranger. And I think we have really an obligation to go back and look at the original and make decisions based on that and anything else. And I think that that's some flexibility that we have and a responsibility that we have.
And not just with these little chamber music things, that anytime you're doing transcription, that, you know, you never know why an arranger or an editor did the things that they did, and you can't just take it for granted that it's correct, because in most cases probably not. So it's, I mean, we've got the original. Even with the additions of the serenade, the Mozart serenades, sometimes, and we've got a pretty good set now, but it's taken a while to get there. There have been a lot of recordings made with, you know, errors in the recordings, just because people took it for granted it was on the page, right? So.
And how does that translate into not arrangements but original compositions? You know, how do you approach that from the conductor's podium as to what's your license to make it sound the way that you want it?
Ooh.
Like a new piece?
Mm-hmm. Or an older piece, but an established composition, not a transcription or an arrangement. But where do you feel your latitude is as a conductor with what's given to you by a composer?
That's a loaded question from a composer. I think that everything starts with what the composer gives us. And I always begin by assuming that the composer wrote exactly what they meant. Tempo and everything. But then the bottom line, like a decision like tempo is so dependent on the hall, and even I've just worked with too many composers that I've done it exactly the tempo they mark, and they go, oh, that needs to be faster. Well, okay, you do that a few times and you're like, okay, look, I'm just going to trust myself on this, and ultimately the bottom line is the sound. How does it sound? What seems to be the composer's intention here in terms of energy and character and so on, and then how can I best try to capture that without just the literalness of what's on the page? I mean, it's a humbling thing, and it always creates some anxiety in me to depart very dramatically from what the composer has given me, because I feel like the relationship between you and I is that you write the piece and then you give it to me and you say, go be musical. Or, you know what I mean, this notation stuff is not all it's cracked up to be. Yeah, so here, be musical. And so I can't just be a mindless drone doing what's on the page. I think a composer expects me to be a partner, but a respectful partner.
Yeah. And sorry, with that, I think that not all composers are the same, but
right.
I like to think of it as, find the music that you find in here in the context of what's provided, and I would hope that that's what all conductors would do, not to try to make it all sound the same, because that's not why we're in the business that we're in, because we want everybody to bring something to it. And the phrase that I like to most use is, convince me that this is the way that it should be played. And all of us could have a different interpretation, but as long as it's convincing, I'm always accepting of that. But if it's convoluted for some reason, there needs to be a really great reason for you to add instruments, or I've seen that happen with composers sitting in the rehearsal hall and someone has added orchestration to a brand new score, and it's like,
hello.
Yeah. And without even discussing. I mean, to me, that's something that you shouldn't do. I mean, if you have to do it, you have the right players. That's another thing. But be respectful in that respect. But bring yourself to it and do whatever you can to find the music or become part of it. So it's more than just the notes on a piece of paper.
I think one of the, personally for me musically, one of the biggest crosses I constantly feel like I bear, and a thought that's always in my head, is that I'm a percussionist that wants to be a collegiate band director one day. And I guess to me, that's only a concern because I am from Texas, where if you're a percussionist band director, you are the drumline dude for the rest of your life. And that's why I'm in my master's program right now, is to kind of avoid that step. And I'm curious from both of you and any master's or DMA percussionists, wind conductors you've ever had, if there's ever been any moments of overcoming that they've had, or any strategies you've used with them, or I mean, I know we're all musicians, and so it's really not that different, but you know, when you're working with the Dvorak Serenade, I'd sure love to be a clarinet player and not a percussionist. You know, I feel like I have a deeper level of understanding that I sort of have to fake it first and then internalize later. And I guess I'm curious if either of you ever had like a certain percussionist conductor student that you really think back to and really, you know, you had a moment with them that would help. Me and I'm sure there's other percussionists in the room that hides as we do that and things like this.
As a percussionist, I think that you got to surround yourself with you have to be listening and living in the world that's not yours.
Yeah.
You know, and we could all stand to live in your world for a while as well. That's kind of for everyone. I've only had one student that was a percussionist, and the issues you're talking about really weren't his issues. That's not. There are other issues, but it's not mine anymore. You make that.
Well, I think the biggest issue for a percussionist is the same as it is for a pianist, which is the matter of sustaining. So I think you need to study voice and study strings.
Okay, good.
You know, so you get the idea of being able to sustain. I think everybody brings you bring certain advantages potentially because you're used to holding something in your hand and making a sound with it. So you already have a head start with that conceptually. But the sustain is a big issue, and the other thing is the issue of articulation. So is it ta, is it da, is it do, is it, you know, so that's something that you need to learn the lingo of the other wind players.
Yeah, but that's, yeah.
No, that doesn't work right now.
But just to go a little farther than that, I think all of us need to live in the string and vocal. I mean, that sustain thing is so important, and strings don't have to breathe, and they do have to breathe, but they don't have to. They can make that sound go for forever. And just the way that a great singer can use their voice is, to me, even way past what a wind player can do with the air and the instrument. Just because there's nothing competing with the air, it's just.
And the nuance of string bowing, even if you go no further than up and down. You know, how many notes would you want to have go up before you actually arrive somewhere? And we have the potential to have bars and bars and bars of up-bows that a string player doesn't. You know, how extended really is this feeling of upbeat? How far can we carry this before we really arrive somewhere and then start something again that is all going to have this feeling of up before we go down, as opposed to everything being down, 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 down. Imagine if they played this way all the time. You know, that's not going to sound very interesting.
Everybody has different ideas regarding score study and preparation before you begin something new. Just kind of maybe your guys' ideas on. Maybe a reader.
You should study.
I know. Let's turn this around. Everybody, you say what you should do. What should you do?
Never stop.
Now, let's be specific. You're right, but let's be specific. What are the things you need to do?
Listen to multiple recordings.
That comes really late.
History of the piece.
Okay, history of the piece and
Who's by, where it was in that composer's life.
Genre, time period.
Yeah. How it compares to other people's works, like similar composers, contemporary.
right, and maybe if it comes from a family tree, that's interesting. What are the things that you analyze in music?
Well, first off, what instruments are being used, especially in the percussion family? Are they multiple keyboards? Are they using timpani? You know, all kinds of stuff like that.
Great, what else?
I think in that same realm, looking at kind of some oddball situations like alto clarinet, English horn.
Yeah, is it really necessary? You know, I mean, that's what I look at. When there's an alto clarinet part, do I really have to decide how to do this? Or can I just, you know, right?
Yeah.
I like the play parts. I mean, either on the keyboard or just, I teach middle school, so I carry a trumpet around all day. And even if, you know, I'm a tuba player, but you can't really walk it. And even if it's a piece like that, you know, if you see a melody and you're thinking, well, how do I want that to be played expressively? Play it for yourself. And you don't have to play on that instrument, just play it.
Right. Keep going, what else? What are you supposed to do?
Framework, form,
harmony,
And what all is a part of form?
Cadences, phrases.
Modulation, cadence.
Phrases, extensions, how things fit together, how things are different here versus how they are here. How many statements of the theme? How do they evolve? What else?
Articulation.
What about it?
What kind you want to use? What would be appropriate? How you want
And
to
how do you
show,
decide that?
What sounds right?
How do you decide that?
What's marked in the score? You know, indications that are given to you by the
Right, but then how do you decide what the staccato sounds like?
performance practice.
Okay, and given that, how do you decide? You try on a lot of different sounds, that's how. And conductors, I think we're too quick to want to have an answer. How am I going to do this? Bang. Live in the gray area. Try on a lot of, well, it could be more like this, or it could be more like this, or whatever. Don't study like I've got to decide all of this stuff today. Live in the gray area. Okay, what else?
Establish tempos.
Right, and how do we do that? But how do we know? Test drive, absolutely. So you can't do this if I'm going to do this piece tomorrow and I'm starting it today. There's no time to test drive anything because I have to survive. So I've got to front load this, so I have a lot of time to experiment and give this music a chance to find its way into my body and see what feels right. You try on a lot of things and then you decide what feels right, what sounds right. What else?
Key centers, as mentioned. Key.
Good, harmony, harmonic expressivity. What makes the music go? Is it the melody? Is it the rhythm? Is it the harmony? Is it the structure? The answer is yes. And there are different times that different things come to the fore, and that the harmonic pace is going to be what determines what I'm doing here. The sequence is going to determine what I'm doing here. The change in rhythmic pace is going to determine what I'm doing here.
Know what the problem areas are going to be.
Sure, absolutely.
There's going to be intonation problems. If it's for younger groups, if the technician has to remember to play C sharp.
Yeah, accidental.
You know.
It gets you every time.
Right.
The hand signal.
Second valve.
I think looking at like just intonation within chordal structures of like, you know, I don't know, I even mark arrows all over my parts just so it's like quick access of, you know, you're the third, therefore, that kind of stuff, just intonation, going through that process.
Which instruments are going to be playing, you know, even if the third overall might need to be flattened in that chord, it might be a note on an instrument that's sharp.
This naturally sharp, so
that's
you
be
kind of,
extra flat.
yeah, exactly.
Tessiture on individual instruments, you know, who's playing, in what range.
All of this is great. Now, has anybody said anything you haven't thought of before? No. So we all know what we're supposed to do. It doesn't mean we do it. You know, and we all know what we're supposed to do. And I would add that the sooner we can get, you know, like the homework part done, you know, the stuff you look up and the analysis and all of this other, the sooner we can get that done, the more time we can spend with the daydreaming part. And the part that takes the information from being, you know, information to being something that we just feel about the music. We don't have to think about it anymore. It's like if you're a trumpet player, now how do I figure E flat again? You don't think that. If you're playing, you just know how it goes. Then you're thinking about much deeper things. And it's the same thing for a conductor. I don't think we spend enough time kind of feeling it, or what is this music trying to say? What is it trying to express? What's the energy of this? What's the conflict? What makes this go? What is the nature of this music? And how can I embody that and bring that to life for the people that are playing it? That's score study. The other stuff is homework. And I think we go right from homework where we have all this information in our heads, right out here. Right? And that's why our bodies are empty. That there's nothing that comes from here to here that leads everything out here. And that's the score study, in my opinion.